So I wanted to talk about pathological or dangerous breathing. This used to fall into the category of what I would call like conspiracy theory, or trying to understand the motivations for why you see different things happening in the world. Like, why is this happening? What's the motive force? What's the chain of cause and effect behind certain events? And so that used to be a study of like psychology, biology, animal drives is another thing, sociology, finance, all the motivational forces that you see in the world. So that's what I used to call this stuff, but now I just call it like dangerous breathing. And so if you boil everything down, like the actual motivational force of all human behavior, all life, is breath, is the breathing. That's why the body is moving. So if you're interested in conspiracy stuff, the why is found in the breath. And so what most people call like why, it's mostly we're worried about like, why isn't this going correctly? And so that's just called dangerous breathing. So sometimes you can get involved in breathing practices that are like dangerous. I'm not even going to say they're not healthy or unhealthy, good or bad, but they're kind of dangerous. They have a high risk and things go wrong a lot of the time. And so depending on your like relationship to that person, if they're doing a dangerous breathing practice, it can cause you harm, and cause them harm. Because breathing, if you understand it, it's breath isn't just this. It's the definition of breath is the linking or the coupling of the outside world with the inside world. It's where you have this inside world, this direction, this motivation, this thing. You basically have all these electromagnetic or ether cycles or charge. There's oscillating charges in you that are spinning and spiraling and rotating, just like how a whirlpool is basically spinning, spiraling waves. Like once waves start spinning and spiraling, they stop behaving like those things, and you can get these patterns to where the waves are going around in a circle. And so that waves going around in circle, the easiest way to look at that is like at your circulatory system, your blood vessels. That's going in a circle, and then that's like a gear, and then above and below that gear, like all the metabolism of all the cells is a gear underneath the heart rate, or the blood circling causes the Krebs cycle and other stuff in the cells to cycle. So, and then the day-night cycle is like a big gear outside of that causes the breath to cycle. So if you look at the breath, it's like this nested, it's a fractal system of gears that are kind of like pushing back and forth on each other. And so it goes both, like you breathe in the oxygen, and then you push out the CO2. The plants use that. So the gearing is in all directions. All the vortices are geared together. And then the breathing is when you take your ego, or your sense of self is a cyclic neural oscillation. It's a mental pattern. It's a cycling mental pattern, and it's geared into, like, in one way or another, it's geared into the circulatory system. It's geared into the other patterns. And so it's a cyclical pattern, just like how your cells and your aerobic cycle is a geared system. And so breathing is when any of these systems, there's energy moving outside of them, and the breath is when they are conscious and they take the energy coming in from the outside or from below, and then that causes, and they make it so that that causes or creates or enhances their particular spinning, or that system's particular spinning. So the breath is any instance where the energy is being transferred from a higher or lower system into that system. And so there's breathing at multiple levels, because it's like you have your neural oscillations and your neural cycles and your neural waves that are repeating like that, one of which is the ego, another of which is the sense of body, the individual sense of body. You have those rhythms, and then you have your you have various hormonal rhythms, you have whatever. So each one of those layers can breathe. And so that breath, when you really, like, when it vitalizes the life, that's what people are calling like meaning. Meaning is a level of breath where you're tractioned into the energy and the movement patterns of your life. You're taking this situation, you're taking the circumstance, you're taking the energy at large, and you're able to take that energy, and it causes your circulation systems to maintain themselves. It provides energy, it provides fuel to your life. So that sense of meaning is there, but it's anytime that there's any sort of thrill, any sort of exhilaration, any like people get so taboo violations. If you do something taboo, anything that gets your heart rate up, any sort of risky near-death stuff, you get pulled over by a cop is an example that I know that gets my heart rate going. All the experiences that people consider to be like love, passion, all of that stuff is attempts or activities of taking in energy from the outside or the inside. Like, you can, when you run, there's energy, there's cycles of atoms, like in the carbohydrates and the fats. There's cycles holding those things together, and when you do things like exercise, you take that energy and the cycling from like the chemical bonds, and it actually goes into your ego, your physical body movement patterns. So that's why people find you're taking the breath out of those things and putting it into yourself. And so but where did that come from? That used to be the breath of another creature. It used to be the breath of a plant or an animal or fungus or a bug. And so when people are doing, like, when people are living a meaningful life, and the cosmic ordering of the heavens, the yearly cycle, the stars and all that, like, if you can get it so that energy propels you or moves you, then you feel breath. Breath is basically the activity of sailing. Like, what's the difference between sailing and just drifting at sea? It's this ever so slight conscious orientation. It's just you're just adjusting the angle of your sail and the angle of, like, say, a rudder, and then suddenly all the energy at large is pushing you around where you want to go, or it's vitalizing your life. And so our sense of pain and pleasure is based off of our more or less highest memorable breath attainment. So you're given other things kind of sail for you or breathe for you in a way. It's very similar to like breast milk. You go from living, like the mother is breathing entirely for you, and then you start breathing at least air, and then you still get the milk from you, and then eventually you're breathing air and taking in food. So in any instance, you have something done for you, you learn how to breathe at that level, and then that thing goes away, and you have to figure out how to do it on your own. And people feel that desire to get more breath in. That is the motive force for addiction, any sort of drive, the spiritual impulse. All motivation is from you were being breathed. You had an experience of the fullness of breath to where the whole, like, everything is breathing for you, and then that's taken away, and you have to figure out how to breathe at that level. And so there's different ways of getting that back, or of figuring out how to breathe. So people get involved in spirituality or money. That's where the economy comes in. Everybody's collective motivation. You can come in, and that can push on you and spool your body up. You can use so the conspiracy stuff is like one of the, if you really look and be honest with yourself about what is it that causes me as a human being, my nature, what is it that really opens me up and causes me to breathe very deeply. It's like you can be in any moment, and if you're not breathing is basically distraction. So anytime you're not breathing, you're in a state of distraction. So it's like, what brings you out of a state of distraction? Like, what really, really brings you out of a state of distraction as a human? At the lowest level is like violence. Having violence done to you or doing violence to somebody else causes you to pay attention, and you really pay attention. Sex, reproduction, and like I was saying, like think about like what really, like when you get in trouble, taboo violations, so all types of abuse, all types of scandal, those things get your heart rate up. That's breathing. So that's what I mean by a dangerous breath practice. And when you notice somebody is engaged in a dangerous breath practice once, they're addicted to it. They're addicted to that level of breathing for the rest of their lives. So like when you look at politicians or stuff like that, if you see anything like this, if you see any sort of tendency, or you see definite evidence of dangerous breathing practices, of like scandal, then you know for sure that they're addicted to that. So the only way that they're gonna act like a normal person ever again is if they have like a crazy deep spiritual practice, or some sort of intense struggle. They have to find something that causes them to go right. And so sometimes you taste things like, I haven't done this one, but I mean, like imagine like murder, or imagine your first sexual experience, or like you're getting into a fight. All these things that get your thing up, that's like when people say that they're the arousal state. The arousal state is because the energy outside of your breath, outside of your fractal, is pushing into you and causing your energy to like things like drugs unlock energy inside of your body and release it, and so that can actually hollow out some of the energy that you need as a foundation for physicality, like the energy in the bonds, or the energy in the mind, the psychic energy in the mind that's cycling at a very regular pace just to give you a nice stable sense of self. That takes up a lot of energy, but it forms the foundation of the physicality of the everything else that you can do. So in some sense, like if you start to like light your psychology on fire, your sense of self, you start breaking like your normativity, you start breaking mental patterns, that frees up a tremendous amount of energy. But at the same time, it's like potentially lighting your own sailboat on fire. It's like you're much lighter and you're freer, but it can cause, what people call psychosis. So when you see, like, if people get involved in dangerous breathing practices, they can become frail and brittle physically from drug use. They can become addicted to taboo. So you know that the only way that they can get into the normalcy of society basically becomes a drug for them. So there's a lot of celebrities and politicians that are addicted to scandal and taboo violation and all that stuff, and you go, why would they do that? And they do it and they have to do it because otherwise there's tremendous suffering to be breathing at a lower level than the one that you remember. So when they say that power corrupts, it's like, even if you're the best person and you do everything correctly, the exhilaration of winning, the exhilaration of using power, there's no way that it doesn't cause an addiction. So when somebody gets power, they at the same time they also receive an addiction. And there's no way around this. And so the only people that you can kind of like if they're not being honest about the nature of breathing or of how the world works, trying to there's just a big effort to that's the type of farming that people have. Powerful people farm out lower people because doing this is a type of breathing. It gives them life. So everyone's all governments, especially all these spy agencies and stuff like that, the people that are doing things secretly, that's a rush. It's an exhilaration. So the organization as a whole, the degree to which they wield power is the degree to which they have an addiction. They just have an addiction. So it's like, you'll notice, like, they have to, the organization as a whole behaves like an addict trying to get a high. So it's like how people can get addicted to conflict, get addicted to abuse, get addicted to negative situations, like when our like dating patterns, our relationships and stuff like that. Those are all breathing patterns. So there's all these different types of power and all these different ways to unlock like very deep aspects of breathing. And just, you kind of have to know that they're all efforts in this way are kind of dangerous, because even if they work, it comes with an addiction, and then that's a lifelong addiction that you have to manage and you have to deal with it. And this can happen to individuals, but it also happens to groups of individuals. So when you see yeah, you just look at these different organizational structures, religious, government, financial, economic. They, no matter what, you look at how they're behaving. If they've taken power, if they have succeeded and touched real power, touched real breath, have figured out how to take in this outer movement and used it to spool up their success. If they move away from that spooling up of success at all, you'll know that that's just an exhale, and you know that they have to go for another one, because you have to inhale it that deeply again. And so that's the breathing is the motive behind all like good and bad behavior. So when people are trying to spike themselves with that breath power, there's an unavoidable addiction. The same way that you have an unavoidable addiction to the air. So when you see people at a particular arena or level, they're gonna have to go in and out. So if there's not active of figuring out how to stabilize that in a healthy way, that's not based off of power, that's based off of like letting you kind of have to let the world breathe you, and just not try and change too much of it. It's just sailing. Like any of the attempts to strongly influence the world, at the very best, makes you addicted to influencing the world that much. Like you shoot up heroin once and you've radically influenced your world. Like if a central intelligence agency like overthrows a government once, if they do one thing where they've manipulated the population just once, there's an unavoidable addiction to that behavior, that thrill, because that when you're influencing the world, that's breathing as well. So the breath is when the world influences you, and the breath is also when you influence the world. And so whenever you do that, it resets your sense of what is breathing enough or not. And so getting success also makes it so that anything less than that is tremendous agony or tremendous pain. And that's the why behind things. And there's no way to really avoid it, other than being like absolutely honest and trying to stop or trying to let go of that power and just do natural sailing. Which means like no secrets, no taboo violations. Like you're living a relatively clean, life. Like not trying to manipulate the situation too much. Like obviously there's some level of interaction that you need to have. Like you do need to manipulate the situation a little bit, but if you are manipulating the situation too much, that's seizing or taking power, and doing that is also seizing or taking an addiction to that power. Fame, human attention, that's a type of breathing. And the world's like creating life. The breath wants to happen. So just any sort of opening to what is breathing. Like nobody needs dangerous breathing practices necessarily. But it's like if you don't have that faith and opening, or you forget how, it's like you'll have to, the people will notice that, like, oh man, I do this one particular behavior, I do this one particular activity, and suddenly I'm alive. And so that aliveness needs to happen before. It's like you need to be breathing regardless of if that thing is there. Otherwise, there's going to be an addiction. And so ultimately, like, to get the addictions to stop, there's nothing to do. It's just the recognition of what is happening. Allows the world, or allows God to be doing what God is doing, or to be all this, like, this should lead to only, very cliche understandings. Like, this should be like proving the obvious to you. But there's all sorts of different types of energies and planes of existence that you can tap into to breathe from that level. Like, some people can windsurf. Like, if you're windsurfing, you're turning all of that energy into your ego, or your body. Is like, it's moving your sense perceptions around, changing how you feel. Like, the wind and everything is changing your location, it's changing how you feel, it's doing all this stuff. It's like breathing, and that takes time and skill to learn. So there's all sorts of breath opportunities around in the world, but there's like you have to learn how to do it in some cases. Yeah, that's that. So it's just dangerous breathing practice. So if somebody's like, just look at their power level. And then look at, like, you have to really be like, okay, that's an addict, and how are they managing their addiction? What are they doing to manage their addiction? And is it safe for me to interact with that addiction? Are they aware of their addiction? Do they have other options? Do they have safe ways to breathe? Are they doing whatever? And ultimately, they're asking, do they have a relationship with God? Because if you don't have a relationship with God, then their breath is going to be constantly like. So it's like, it's like basically, as long as the person is, overtly either in a relationship or searching for God, at very minimum, they're going to be slightly dangerous. And at a certain point, you want to keep kids away from it and stuff like that. Or lock them up in jail and stuff. Like, a lot of the times our breathing can become so dangerous that it's like you got to go to rehab. And that's why things used to be, it was very harsh social penalties for certain types of breath exhilaration. So if you do things that cause a certain, like, that, where it's you exerting a particular level of power over the situation, it's like that is known to be corrupting. So you have to figure out how to do something to, like, move past that, get over it, etc. Otherwise it causes the addiction, and then as the person like seeks out that level of control and power again, oftentimes they'll bump into or cause the people around them to experience that same thing that gets the heart going, the exhilaration, the trauma, and then that makes other people addicted. So these addictions to dangerous types of breathing can be they're like social contagions. Very, very similar to you know, viruses, cold and flu, stuff like that. Anyway.